So, and with that, welcome everyone. Nice to have you here. Today, in a slightly different style, Andreas, great to have you with us. We have an exciting topic for you, and that is a brief backstory. I also had a bit of a dialogue with Recep here from Dr. Wack, and we exchanged thoughts on various products and also touched on a topic that certainly concerns you, and that I think I can say, Andreas, what we have massively underestimated. It is about the topic of hand polishing. Because the team plans, I don't remember exactly when, but the survey isn't that old. They started a large survey complex among all community members, including those in their test pool. Andreas, you also have a few more details. So these are not people who are just buying an ice cream in the pedestrian zone in Frankfurt am Main and then being asked if they polish their car. These are people who really engage with wheel cleaners and all the products.
So these are already car care enthusiasts, let's call them that.
Exactly. And among them, a survey was conducted. There were 2 questions included that are incredibly exciting for today's topic. One of the questions was about how often do you polish your car or your cars with a polishing agent. Andreas, let's assume that those who participated in this survey are indeed active in vehicle care. And you had a small remark.
Yes, exactly. Let's clarify. We assume that polishing actually means polishing because there are still many in the general public, and among those not interested in car care, who often confuse polishing and waxing. For them, it seems to be synonymous. But let's assume in the survey that the people really meant polishing here. Regardless of whether it is pure polishing, cut polishing, or all-in-one with wax or anything else, simply means polishing. That is our assumption. And it should also be mentioned that, nearly 600 people participated. That means it is already relevant, I would say. In technical terms, one would say statistically significant. In the thousands, I think. Exactly. So this is not a small survey. Of course, we must not assume that this applies to the entire market in the same way. This is always difficult in statistics. But it is true that I say these are definitely exciting results that have also made us think. And that is exactly why we are making this video.
Yes, so 603 people have given their opinion on this. How often do they polish their car or cars with a polishing agent, that is, with a polish? Regardless of whether it is finish cut, with wax, without wax, whatever, here we see again a breakdown into percentages of the participants from the 603 votes and, of course, also the number per year. Here it is, of course, not specified when this one time is, e.g. from the start of the season or the end of the year or whatever, but it is generally about the frequency. Here we have a classification of once a year, at least twice, at least 4 times a year. It's a month.
Maybe they really confused it, polishing and waxing.
So at that point, I might say that people might have sometimes said that they do it professionally and have kind of overlooked that. Whether it is their own cars or Andreas's, it could also be that someone really polishes regularly because they have such a beautiful show vehicle or a true collector's item.
Because we keep saying it, car care is a hobby, car care is fun. For some, it is even like a form of therapy when someone stands there once a week on Sunday afternoon and polishes their car. Yes, why not?
And then we have again 1% for at least once every 2 weeks, or once a week. And that 1% represents 6 people who voted for that.
At least 6 people, exactly from the 600.
Yes, they are definitely very much involved, that must be said clearly. But let's focus, and I find this question I find it super interesting. Specifically, let's focus on the large bars, and the most frequent one is 53%. So over 300 people voted here that they polish at least twice a year. And that's actually what I always prefer for my vehicles. That means once before the season and then maybe touch it up again during the winter months.
I personally fall into the 17% category because I always tell myself, but that's exactly where we need to distinguish between hand or machine. Polish only as often as necessary, because every polish means paint removal. And that's why I tell myself that this 1 year is not fixed. If I see that in this 1 year not many paint defects have occurred, then I might skip it. Or you just do a little finishing round around the vehicle, for example, because not much has happened. So twice a year. Surprised me, as I must say, that it is indeed half of the respondents. I wouldn't have expected that people do it so often.
I would have thought it would be more than once a year.
What impresses and surprises me even more is at least 4 times a year, and 20%, so nearly 1/5 of the people.
So there is also a large part that really polishes several times a year. Yes, I would have imagined the bars, the blue and the yellow, a bit smaller and the green one much stronger.
But yes, a pyramid like that, one like that.
Yes, rising upwards. But it's nice to see something like that. And with so many people who answered, these are simply great results and also very, very interesting to observe.
And also thank you for sharing, Recep.
Thanks again for sending it. I mentioned that right away. We will definitely make a talk video about it because I find it an impressive result. Because the second question then adds a bit to the whole thing, at least once a month, Andreas. I also find that high. Once a month.
The funny thing is, if someone were to ask us that in the stream or elsewhere, we would say, are you actually crazy?
Once a month, that's practically polishing the car every 4 weeks. And I might really assume that people also use a polish with wax content to simply restore it. That's the point you brought up. I believe many have that in combination with this entire survey with Dr. Lackpolitur because there are also sealing components, exactly. So they take that into account.
Yes, exactly.
Very, very exciting.
It's always the case that now we come to the second question. It's always the question. When you use a polish that also contains sealing components, how do people use it? If you just spread it like a wax on the paint and don't really work it in, then you're not really polishing in that sense, but people notice that the beading behavior decreases, so I apply it again.
And that's why it's difficult to know in 2001 what people really understood. We need to consider these answers more. Among the people who use these polishes with wax content, exactly, with sealing components, because this is specifically about the polishes from Dr. Wack, we need to keep that clearly in mind. And I can understand if someone clicks that they use or polish with this polish. There are polishing agents in it. Exactly. That they do it once a month, every 4 weeks, I can absolutely understand.
Effectively, perhaps the question was more about how often they use this product rather than how often you polish in the sense we understand it now. Maybe we need to understand it that way.
Yes, but still a very, very impressive result. Feel free to write your opinion down below. What do you think about the distribution? I find it super, super interesting. And the second question that we include in the video makes it even more exciting. 2001. Let's take a look at that. And this comes out, and we include the next image. And the question, I'll open it again on my end. How do they polish? Again, 603 people answered this. And here again in percentage terms. By hand with a polishing machine. By hand and polishing machine, and I do not polish myself. Have it done by a detailer. Can you recognize? So, point. And here I have to say, Andreas, we need to go through this calmly, step by step. Overall, I am impressed by so many individual numbers here. First, we start at the beginning with hand polishing. 60% said they polish by hand. So every bar here is impressive, but 60%. Would have never expected that. Never. Because I always say in my videos, or you do too, of course, that a polishing machine is always an advantage. And the entry into machine polishing is also not financially burdensome these days. We know we make enough videos, and others do too.
So exactly, it is no longer difficult.
Maybe for many there is still too much hesitation, too much fear of breaking something. That's why we work against it to alleviate your fears and create many videos for you, and we also offer workshops. And I think those who participated in the workshop know that they would probably not register in the 60% anymore. But that is of course a large field now. And I find it really amazing how many here actually say, I polish by hand. I wouldn't have thought that's incredible. So we have to. And that is also the reason why we are making this video for you. We will expand the topic of hand polishing much further. 60%, Andreas. I am absolutely impressed. I wouldn't have thought that.
I was shocked that there are so many, especially when you consider what the other answer options would have been. I mean, we'll get to that shortly. There is another bar that really makes me wonder. But as almost 2-3 polish by hand, that is quite something.
So I say, all the bars are here. We could make a separate video about that. Let's move on to the second one, the blue one. And I believe that one also shocked you. Let's say.
But here it is that there are so few who say only with a polishing machine.
Wow, I would have thought about the green bar. I would even have said, okay, I would have gone along with 40%. I would have said, okay, but for that with a polishing machine, I would have already set it at about 25%.
I would have seen them as more balanced. I'll reveal it now. The one that really makes me wonder is the next one, the yellow one.
Let's first talk about the blue one. With a polishing machine, I would have expected significantly more than 6%. Crazy. But now again, in regard to that, Andreas, in our community and also what we, for example, see that polishing machine sets are very, very well received by you. And that's why I actually thought, after seeing the result, I estimated it much higher, but you can see how high number is of people who still don't polish with a machine. And also, again, like the first time, how high the proportion is. The people who may still not dare to try it or say, I'm fine with doing it by hand.
It's crazy. It's also a bit like 2001. In English, they say humbling. I can't think of the German word. It's a bit like it brings us back down to earth, how small of a niche it really is we serve and in which we operate.
I would love to, if I had the opportunity and there was teleportation, I would beam to everyone's home and show you the video that you can learn wonderfully with a polishing machine and how easy, really to a certain extent, how easy it actually is, and that many people have such fear about it. What you see on the internet, 2001 results and great videos, and then the car was polished for 50 hours and so on, makes me think that it actually misleads people, creating a completely false image of what a beginner can actually achieve. Because I believe that you can achieve a lot with a polishing machine if you approach it a bit more skillfully and inform yourself, and not just go at it wildly, but perhaps invest the nearly $100 that this beginner machine costs.
So people spend it more foolishly, definitely. I don't believe that this is the obstacle. I really believe it's either inhibitions, fear, or a lack of knowledge that people simply don't know that this option exists.
I think it's a very important point. I believe that the financial aspect is not the major deciding factor, but rather a bit of fear and respect in saying, I'm going to use the machine, I don't want to break anything, the paint surface is so thin, and I don't want to have to repaint it, and so on. So, very, 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 very exciting. But don't let yourselves be scared, as I said. No. Many exaggerate here with their supposed high performance. Just dare to try it. I think using both hand and polishing machine is okay. You would have said 2 and 30% more. Less.
So, because I understand the bar by hand, understand the bar with a polishing machine, the combination of both. I understand it from one point, namely that you have a machine with 1 or 2 support plates and still have to do the small fine areas by hand. I understand that point. I wouldn't have thought that it would be 30% of the people. So, because I thought if you already take the step with the polishing machine, then you also get the small machine as well. Then you do everything mechanically. That's why I would have somehow swapped the 2 bars. I would have seen the blue one and the yellow one swapped.
Yes, but it is impressive to have this clearly stated as a fact. I have to say I believe it is because someone gets a starter set, like for 150 or whatever, with polishers. We are now talking about complete sets, not individual polishing machines, but with the polishers and pads included, around $150 to $200, somewhere in that range. And then it costs. And now you have to consider, Andreas, a smaller machine, usually with a battery, costs $200 and up, plus pads again. That means we're practically paying for a small machine where you say I only have a few small spots. Do I want to spend even more money than what I have already achieved with 125 and 75? Do I want to spend more on the small details than what I have already spent before? Or do I just take a small polishing pad and try to polish it by hand? That might be a reason why this bar is so high. That's why we are also looking forward to your feedback. Write in how you could explain this. Would you have expected different numbers? I'm really curious to hear what you say. And the last point, Andreas? Yes, really surprises me.
Not necessarily me, because I am now a bit.
So let's say I would have imagined it at least a bit higher. I would have set it at 5% to 10%.
One has to be realistic now. The pool that Dr. Wack has built up consists of car care enthusiasts. Who tends to bring their car to a detailer? Those are the ones who do not want or cannot deal with car care. Therefore, 2001, yes, that doesn't surprise me that much.
So I would have naturally estimated it as the smallest bar as well. However, I would have really said that it is a bit higher. But one must again say that it has to be compared with the first bar. Of course, those who use Dr. Wack's products and polish by hand, for example, would say, I wouldn't give my vehicle to anyone or something like that. Exactly, that has to be seen in combination again. However, I would still have imagined it a bit higher, so I could have imagined around 5%, 2001. But also interesting, now you can see it from the other side, Andreas. A very small part of these 600 respondents, or 603, as I hand over my car, or of course also from the aspect that it costs significantly more money. So, there are of course always offers, Andreas, polishing the whole car, cleaning inside and out, and everything for $59.90, correct? But there are also, as I said, where exterior polishing, where only the polishing costs $500, $600, $700, depending on the condition, which, if we are honest, is a realistic price.
That's not the case.
And it also shows, as you can see here in the survey, that many simply, when you add everything up, are... But that is also important again. Here you have it again, which is why this video is so important and this survey is so exciting. You have to calculate it together. 2001%, and the rest, everyone else, polishes their vehicle, whether by hand or with a polishing machine.
Yes, when I add it up, I come to 99. So somewhere a percent is still missing, but those are rounding.
Those are rounding errors, exactly. And there you have it. And now you have exactly the point. So almost all, 99%, 98, 99, are all working on their own vehicle and are already involved in polishing. Yes. And I find that amazing. So it shows again that we are not talking about people who were surveyed somewhere in the pedestrian zone while shopping, because they would definitely have said, I either don't polish at all, or what is polishing? Yes. Or what is that? So here you can clearly see that there are people in this pool who really engage with car care, either as a hobby, perhaps even professionally, or whatever. So this is a very, very great survey.
It is definitely super exciting and, as Sebastian said, surprising for us and also a bit eye-opening because we have the topic of hand polishing. I don't know if we underestimated it, but the point for us is that once you are into machine polishing, there is no reason to go back to hand polishing. Hand polishing doesn't make anything better. It's just that you don't have to buy these machines. But nowadays, these things are so cheap that there is little reason for us to go back. But we need to engage with it more, and we also need to delve deeper into it, make more videos, because this is definitely a topic, this hand polishing.
And we have actually already made quite a few videos about it, Andreas. We polished the B-pillar by hand. I just did that recently. Correct, polishing the B-pillar. And we have also had polishes where I polished by hand, and where we saw that you can really achieve a lot. For example, you saw that in the B-pillar video or on the paint, that by hand, regardless of which polish you use, different results can certainly come out. In general, you can achieve a lot with hand polishing. But the reason, Andreas says, is correct, is that over time, if you really want to create a bit of cut and not just remove superficial fine scratches, but really want to have a proper cut on the paint, then you have to somehow replace the machine with your own strength. And that becomes very, very difficult.
And I mean, there is a reason why most hand polishes that are labeled as such are all-in-ones, where there is a sealing component or a filler or something else included. There is a reason for that because they tend to be a bit easier to work with, but even more so because they not only remove light defects, but may also cover or conceal them, which is the reason.
The second point is also that, for example, if you have deep scratches, you can almost never remove them with a hand polish. Very rarely. Or you have to work in two stages, first using a really nice grinding paste or grinding polish, which you obviously have to work by hand. What you have already seen in my BS video, Andreas, is how you scratch the paint E again because the polishing bodies cannot break down at all, as they simply remain coarse, and you are practically rubbing sand over the surface. Yes, and that must also be said. I believe that most polishes that can also be worked by hand, Andreas, tend to fall more into the medium to finish range. In the finish range one way or another. But I believe that a proper heavy cut polish by hand will be, I think, very, very difficult.
I believe it is also technologically difficult to achieve that. You would need a polishing grain that breaks down extremely quickly. And then the question is, does it even make much difference if it breaks down so quickly?
So overall, one must clearly say very, very cool results. Surprisingly, astonishingly, amazing. Everything that we have in our repertoire. And Andreas has already said, we will tackle much, much more in this area for you. We will show you different tools, test various polishes for you, and also present them.
I have the fewest excuses because I currently have the Mini, and the Mini is so small. One could think about whether I really want to do the whole car by hand. I have always resisted it, but the Mini really is.
It's enough if you just do a hood, Andreas. After that, you definitely have to switch to your left arm to train it as well.
Doing a whole car by hand? You can save yourself the gym then.
Yes, and I would have been at that point, for example, if I were not filming videos now, I would definitely have started out doing it by hand and with a polishing machine. And if you keep working your way deeper and say you want to dive even deeper, then you are at the point where you only work with a polishing machine.
Correct, because there is no, as I said, there is no reason to go back.
Yes, but the part, people who stay in this area, I'm fine with cleaning my vehicle a bit once or twice a month and then polishing it by hand once or twice a year. The area is so large that we need to address the topic more for you. That is the conclusion we draw from this matter. Okay, we don't want to prolong the video any further. Don't need to. We have discussed everything. We have looked at all the results. Feel free to take another look at the first option here. I'll show you again how often you polish your car. But the exciting thing is really this graphic here. Take a good look at it again. Think about it. Write your opinion about both graphics and results in the comments below. This is very, very interesting. Where would you place yourselves? I think it's great to discuss this with you and to ask for your opinions. You can make very good use of that. So, write your perspectives in there and where would you categorize yourselves? 2001? Alright, that's it. You know what more is coming your way in the future. Exactly, and we'll see each other next time. Thank you very much, Andreas, and till next time. You're Sebastian, and goodbye.